All right, what's up, everybody? So tonight I have a very special episode of the Serial Dreamer podcast. As you know, I just recently moved back to Georgia, and so one of the programs that I've kept up with a lot, even when I was in Alabama, is the Buford program, one of the best programs in the state of Alabama in pretty much every single sport. So tonight I have the privilege of sitting with Coach Wes Parker. He is the head coach for the Buford men's basketball program. So we're going to get into a lot of things with Coach Parker, see how he got into basketball, where the Buford program is now, and really kind of gain some motivation for those coaches out there wanting to coach varsity ball.
Appreciate it.
So, Coach Parker, so we'll start, really with you. Just kind of about, how you grew up, what sports you played growing up, and kind of when you found that love for basketball.
Okay, yeah. Well, I had a pretty good childhood. I grew up in Vidalia, Georgia, which is in South Georgia, and so both my parents are teachers. It was my dad's second profession, but my mom's always been a teacher. So, grow up in a house with two teachers was great. Had a lot of accountability
Yeah.
and a lot of love. So. And in Vidalia, I also played sports, and so had a pretty normal childhood, I'd say.
Okay.
Played football, played basketball, played baseball, but I guess I was the best at basketball. Wasn't great at any of them, but I was the best at basketball, I guess. And then was fortunate enough to go to Piedmont University in North Georgia and play. And so I guess I always kind of knew I wanted to be a teacher and a coach, but I didn't know what level or if it'd be a head coach or not. But when I was done playing at Piedmont after 4 years, I stayed on as a graduate assistant.
Okay.
And that's really when I fell in love with it, Daryl. Like, I was getting my master's degree, and I was in charge of workouts during the day.
Yeah.
I had group, and I helped with scouting, and those were the two things I fell in love with.
Yeah.
I wasn't really building a team or constructing a roster or worrying about culture that much. I didn't really know much about it.
Right.
But the workouts and the scoutings were really what I fell in love with.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's actually how I kind of fell in love with the recruitment side of it as well. I went to Alabama, so I was able to kind of learn from Coach Petway. As far as like that recruitment side of it, how to connect with families, how to connect with kids, and that's really kind of where my love for just training and stuff like that even came from. So I completely relate to you when it comes to that, because that's really the meat and potatoes of coaching is those relationships.
No doubt. You're spot on. And is he the one that's he's the head coach at Kennesaw State now?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. They got a great program going.
Yeah. From recruitment. Like he's one of the best recruiters I think I've ever seen. So at that program, he's gonna get some great talent because he's a great recruiter.
Absolutely.
So that relationship that you talked about as far as being able to help with scouting and learn that area of the game, I think connects you with the players a lot more. So that's huge.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So when you so that experience kind of let you know right then that you wanted to be a coach. So what was your first coaching position? Was it a head coaching position or?
Yeah, it was actually. And so I fell in love with the game. And I've always loved the game since I've been playing since I was young. But the coaching aspect, I guess, is when I got to college.
Right.
And my college coach, who is the athletic director at North Georgia, University of North Georgia, helped me get a job in Burke County. So I just graduate.
Yeah.
I get my first head coaching job in Burke County.
Yeah.
And, at the time, all I really had was just a passion for the game, the relationships that you talked about. But I look back on that now, Daryl, and I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't. So I was there for 2 years, and then I went to a school in Macon at Tatnall Square.
Okay.
I was there for 2 years. My buddy was the head coach at North Gwinnett here in Georgia, and so I went and worked for him.
Okay.
So I kind of took after 4 years being a head coach, took a step back and went to work with him, and he had a great program going. I learned a lot there, and while I was working there, I got a call from Eddie Martin, and Eddie Martin is the one of the best basketball coaches in the state in the Southeast.
Yeah.
He had just gotten hired at Buford and called me to come be his assistant. And Daryl, to be honest with you, working for working for Coach Martin has been the greatest investment I've had in my coaching.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of started my career out in a different path where I went straight into being a head coach and trying to figure it out, and take a step back when I went to North with Zach, and then being at Buford with Eddie. That's where I learned. That's where I learned how to coach.
Right. So from that, you took the head coaching job at Buford from that, correct? You were assistant
No,
coach.
this will be my 11th year at Buford, and and so at the beginning for 8 years I was an assistant.
Right.
So, but yeah, after Coach Martin, then they hired another coach named Benji Wood, and then I took over after Coach Wood.
Was that an easy transition to go from assistant coach since you were in the same program? Was it kind of an easy transition, or was it still kind of that shell shock to go from just being the assistant to now being the person that makes all the decisions?
You know, after being a head coach and working other places, you know, transition to the role of head coach wasn't a big deal.
Okay.
But the responsibilities and the stress, and maybe, you know, all the other things that come with it when you sit in that seat, that's, you know, at a place like Buford where
Right.
you have unbelievable resources and unbelievable you know, help around you, and a great community.
Right.
It's just, you just feel so much responsibility to all the people because you're just the steward of the basketball program.
Right.
You know, and so that transition and that realization of all the responsibilities was a lot, but not just being the head coach wasn't as much as those responsibilities were.
Absolutely. And the expectation, you know, that's
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think about that sometimes because people have asked me about that. And, you know, if I'm being completely honest with you, I am so thankful that I'm at a place where so many people do care.
Right.
You know, you can coach at places where maybe a whole lot of people really don't care. You
Right.
know, and to be at a place where the community cares, you know, my administration,
Right.
my parents, my athletes. I mean, they care. They want to do well. They want us to see us succeed. And so I'd much rather be in a situation like that than not.
That's that good stress. You know, they talk about bad stress versus good stress. That's the type of stress that allows you to still get a little bit of sleep at night. You know, because
Absolutely.
you do have that expectation, but at the same time, you have people around you that are going to help you reach those goals that they have set for you. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah. So do you see with this program, and we'll get more in detail with the program we have
Yeah.
right now, but do you, just kind of jumping forward, do you foresee a state championship kind of in the near future for your program?
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be great. You know, I've been fortunate. We've won 2 state championships here at Buford, 2017, 2019.
Yeah.
And those were so special. And when those are over with, that's really all you think about is getting back to there.
Yeah.
And then you also realize it may never happen.
Right.
There's so much that has to go into that. I mean, we both know you got to have good players.
Right.
You know, talent has a lot to do with it. Can you stay healthy?
Right.
Can you get lucky? Because you got to think about it. In Georgia, you got to win 5 games to be a state champion.
Right.
And there's going to be one game on that run. Of those 5 games, there's going to be one game where you are not going to play well.
Right.
And can you find a way to win when you don't play well?
Right.
And good teams do that. And so, you know what? I don't know if it'll happen, but we try. I mean, we that's our goal.
Yeah.
I mean,
So do you think your team kind of goes into each year with that goal in mind? Like, do you think they all have that same mindset, like this is what we want to achieve, and then anything that, you know, any milestones you reach while pursuing that, of course, are, you know, good, but you know that's the ultimate goal for everybody.
no doubt. You know, you have a goal, and I also have a purpose as a coach.
Right.
You know, and my goal and my purpose, they can coexist. You know,
Right.
my purpose isn't to win a state championship, but that is our goal. That's why we do this.
Right.
You know, we like to look at the season, and you got milestones and checkpoints. Like your region matters. You know,
Right.
you want to be successful in region, and you want to win a region championship.
Right.
And then after that, you want to pursue a state championship. And then you want to put these guys in events where they can showcase their talent and play really good non-region games.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I think we're all trying to put the best team together
Yeah.
and help those kids be successful. because there's a bond there with teams and coaches that can win that ultimate prize. But
Absolutely.
it's not going to happen every year. And if we don't win a state championship, that year was not a failure.
Right.
That's not my purpose. But to go back to the question, yeah, I mean that's our goal. I mean, and we've got athletes and administration and parents that are committed to, trying to run an elite program.
Right. That's what allows you to achieve those milestones. When the ultimate goal is set high, you reach the smaller milestones to get to the ultimate goal. But like you said, when you're in a state where you do have to win 5 games, and like you said, these are still kids, so
Yeah.
you're not gonna get out there every single game and play lights out. You're gonna have those games where some guys may be on, some guys may be off. You never know what's going on outside of the court as well. So, it's gonna be very hard to win a state championship when you have so much competition. Y'all are
Yeah.
yeah, y'all end up facing against like Grayson, and you have like teams that are as good, and so you're gonna have a lot of competition. So I understand that.
That's such a great point. I mean, there in Georgia there is some phenomenal talent. I
Yeah,
mean, there are really good players and there are really good coaches,
yes,
and it's across the state. You just mentioned one team. I mean, we can list 50 teams
yes,
that are really well coached and have really good players, and you're not going to go out there and just out talent people every
right,
single time.
right,
Definitely not on that 5 game stretch. You're going to play some really good players and really good coaches that are prepared.
absolutely.
So it's tough.
You have those teams that they do look at Buford as being a humongous program in the state. So when they do match up against you, you're gonna have teams that are gonna look at it one or two ways. Either I'm gonna retreat and you're just gonna beat me down, or I'm gonna feel like we have a point to prove. And so
That's
those
right.
teams are the most dangerous, I always say, because those are the games that your players may not be playing as good. And this team is hitting threes from the other side of the court because they're so amped up and hyped. So it's going to be very hard, for you guys to continue winning. But you won your region this year, didn't you?
We did, yeah. We were very fortunate. We won the region the past 3 years.
Yeah.
And so you got the regular season region, and then you got the region tournament.
Right.
With basketball being a tournament sport, but Daryl, you mentioned something that going back to your background of training.
Yeah.
Those big moments you're talking about, and when people play Buford, and we can insert anybody's name. I bet there's a lot of teams and programs that feel this way, but when other teams play them, you get their best shot. And
Absolutely.
so, how are you training them in the summer, and in your fall 4-on-1s and your spring 4-on-1s? Because that's the thing that we really try to get through to our kids is that, guys, this game tonight is the biggest game for them.
Right.
Okay, if they can beat you, and so how do you keep that mentality? Because we've been very fortunate and very blessed
Yeah.
to have some success, but you can't let that make you soft.
Yes.
And so how are you training not only their bodies but the mind too?
Yeah. And you have guys who play more than one sport as well. So, you're not able to have your entire team all year long. Some of these programs, they have a 12-man roster summertime, fall time, and then into the season. And you have to look at you have football players and stuff like that. And I know a couple of your guys. I know one for sure. He was a starter for you for a few games, Tory, and he
Yes.
played football. And they had a
Yeah.
pretty deep run in football. So it's like when you insert these players that were not with you in the beginning of the season, that kind of you have to make changes. You have to adjust to
Yeah.
those. So that also, I think, plays a part. If you would agree that when you're trying to build a championship team, having those adjustments along the way, kind of play a part as well, right?
Man, that's awesome that you said that. I
Yeah.
mean, you've done your research and and you're right. And I'll just give you an example. We'll go back to Tori in a minute, but we've got 11 kids right now that we know for a fact are going to be on varsity.
Yeah.
6 of those 11 play football.
Yeah.
So we won't start the year out obviously with just 5 guys. I mean, we'll have our younger guys that we are excited for and know that they can help us. But you're talking about 6 guys being inserted into a roster in
Right.
December. And Torrey is a phenomenal player for us, and
Yeah.
he's a really good football player.
Yeah.
But when you're inserting those guys in there, I think that's where your intangibles come in. We talk about if you want to be successful, especially if you want to be successful at Buford,
Right.
your intangibles have to be greater than your talent.
Right.
All right. So your intangibles, we're talking about chemistry. We're talking about being a great teammate. Um, a lot of sacrifice goes into this, and you're talking about a kid who may have been a starter before Tori, who we're talking about, gets out there.
Right.
And you got to build that team cohesion and chemistry that, like, you got to, I mean, they got to work together, and it can't be like a battle and a feud. And our guys have been, I hope we can continue it, but our guys have been fantastic.
It shows.
Yes. I mean, and that to me, that's changed a lot in coaching past couple of years. I mean, that's a hard thing to do, and you can lose that team chemistry really quick.
Yeah.
And especially with something like we're talking about, with inserting guys into the roster halfway through and trying to keep that chemistry. That's big.
Yeah. So do you do a lot of team bonding type stuff as far as like off the court? Like, is your team together a lot?
We try, yes,
Right.
we try. We put an emphasis on that. A little bit of it because of the football guys joining the basketball team, but also even if they weren't joining the basketball team, I'd still do that stuff because in basketball, I feel like chemistry is the greatest intangible of our sport.
Yeah.
Because you only got 5 guys playing. And there's some guys that aren't going to play many minutes.
Yeah.
There's some guys that might not play at all.
Yeah.
But they're just as important to that basketball team, whether they start, whether they come off the bench, or whether they are the best practice player.
Right.
I still think high school has a place for that.
Yes.
But man, you know what? Just honestly, having food after practice and hanging out for 30 minutes after practice, or going out to dinner. I mean, these guys like to get together and just eat. We always go out of town at Christmas for a tournament, and I'll just share with you on here. They enjoy that more than anything, and each night we pick a different class, like the seniors, then the juniors, and the sophomores. And we ask them, 3 questions. Who's your hero? What's your highlight? And what's your hardship? A hero, a highlight, and a hardship. And man, I tell you what, the stories that have been shared, and you talk about bonding and chemistry, that something simple like that really has brought our team together.
Yes. While I was here before I moved up to Huntsville for the last 5 years. I was here and I got to watch Buford play. I watched North Gwinnett play. And I was at a lot of Peachtree Ridge games as well. And one thing I took back to Huntsville, one thing I tried to bring to those programs up there was just that, that team chemistry, and letting them understand that, it's not what they do on the court. It's going to start off the court. You may not like everybody, but you have to have a genuine love for everybody in order for you to want to play together. And that was really what missed the mark, I think, in a lot of programs in Alabama as a whole. And I see that especially within your program, like watching, like I said, I saw when Tori joined the team. I think y'all were at a tournament that you were talking about. I think I watched it on NFHS. And just you could tell just through the TV screen that even though he hadn't been there for the first few games I saw, he fit right in. There was never a moment where I felt like, and of course I could be wrong because I'm just looking at TV, but there was never a moment where I felt like his teammates felt like, I don't want you here. You wasn't here before, I don't want you here now. And I think that goes, like you said, those 3 questions and those team bonding moments. I have a love for you. You're my brother. You may not always like your sibling. They may get on your nerves, but you have a real love for your sibling. And these are my brothers. I want to go to war with them. I want to see them succeed, and I'm going to succeed. And that's really what I see within your program. And that's what really caught my eye, why I follow y'all so hard, because it's fun to watch you guys. It's fun to watch, keep up with you on social media. And, I talked to, Tori, them on, DMs and stuff like that, just keeping up with y'all's story of what you have going on in all your programs. It's very fun to watch at Buford.
Daryl, man, I appreciate you saying that. You just said so many great things, but I'm going to take everything you said as a compliment, honestly. But then you talk about noticing other teams that do it, and then you notice some teams that don't do it.
Yeah.
And to the teams that don't do it, I mean, I'm sure they're trying. It's just hard. I mean, it's hard to do that. If I'm a kid, I want me and I want the 4 best players to play.
Right.
But can you have a love for your teammate? Because I still think there's a spot for that in high school sports. I just think the teams that like each other more. The teams that can practice from October and still like each other in February and March
Yeah.
are going to keep playing.
Yeah.
You know, and things like standing up for your teammate that comes out, thanking the passer who gives you an assist, thanking the screener who gives you an assist. I mean, just those little things you can incorporate in basketball, because basketball can, I love it, obviously, it can become a selfish game sometimes if you're not careful.
Yeah.
And that can just erode chemistry. And
Yeah.
so that's really cool that you notice those things.
Absolutely. I've had, like, as a recruiter, that's why I watch all the little things, all the
Yep.
body language type things. And I always tell my kids, you know, you'll learn this as you start driving. But I said, but when somebody gives you an assist, thanking them, giving them that little gesture, is the equivalent of when I let you in. If you're driving, I let you in, and you don't give me my hand wave.
That's right. You got to give me something.
Yeah, I now think you're rude. Like, I shouldn't
Yeah.
have win now because you didn't give me my thank you. And that's the equivalent. Like, you have to thank the person that gives you the assist. You know, thank them for seeing you. Thank you, for seeing that back cut. You know, and as you build chemistry, you start to learn your teammates. You know when they're going to cut. You know when they're going to pop back out. You know, you even start to learn how they're going to miss. You know, when the ball's coming off the rim, you know when they're shooting hard, when they're shooting short. So, like, them being together all the time and learning each other, it goes to show how far you're going to go every year. And,
I agree.
and winning region is a testament to showing you how much work you're putting into that program. You know, because you guys are the standard. You know, you look at programs like yours, you look at the Graysons, these bigger programs, they have a standard.
Right.
And I think the first thing that programs have to learn to do is, especially coaches, you have to let your team know what that standard is.
Yep.
And they have to raise their efforts to meet that standard. And
they will. I mean, you see that in school all the time. I mean, like, if you have high expectations and you're clear in your communication with those, the kids or the guys that we have, they'll rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
They want that discipline. They want the accountability, even though it's not always fun.
Right. Right. So what would you say your goal is for this coming season? What would be the goal? I know we already talked about the goal is always a state championship, but
Right.
what would be the small things that you want to see, like some like your senior class accomplish? 'Cause I know your senior class has been with you, I think, for pretty much the duration of you being the head coach, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So what would you like to see them accomplish this in their last year?
I would like to see them try to carry on the tradition of going undefeated in the region.
Okay.
And win a region championship.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them do that. But again, that's just that's a goal, that's a tangible that would be great. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't mean they're failures.
Right.
But I'm always looking at us if we can reach our ceiling. I mean, we're going to have some players this year that are really good. I mean, we're like I mentioned, those 11 guys, all 11 of those guys can play.
Okay.
It may mean that we don't win more games at all. We might not win more games.
Yeah.
I don't know yet. But those seniors, uniting this team, starting out as a bunch of individuals and becoming family.
Yeah.
How well these seniors lead, because that's the idea, right? Like, you've been in the program for 4 years, and so for your first 3 years, you're learning as much as you can, and now you're a senior now, and you gotta empty the bucket. You gotta pour in. How well are they pulling those freshmen and sophomores along? We'll have 2 guys that didn't play as much last year.
Okay.
That are fighting for a starting position.
Okay.
How well are those seniors pulling those guys along and helping them out?
Yeah.
That stuff's going to matter to me, and how well they lead is something that I'm going to be watching for sure.
Nice. I'm gonna be watching too, and I actually need to get up there and see what I can do, to help your program out, be a part of your program. I was trying to actually get my son into Buford schools, but we couldn't find a place in Buford limits. And coming into the state, I didn't know that there was other schools in Buford. Like, I thought Buford was like the only school up there. So when the administration person was telling me, like, "Oh, that's zone for something else," and I was like, "What?"
That's right. Hey, that's right. Yeah, you're right. It's a great community, but it is difficult to find a place in the city limits. And you're right. There are other schools with a Buford address.
Yeah.
But you're not eligible to be in Buford if you're not in a certain zip code.
Yeah. And so I was like,
you're right. It's tough.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was like, so I'll have to figure out another way to help out from outside of the city. But I just love y'all's program. I really do. I love to watch you guys, and I've been able to, watch you over the years, and that's been one program that I can say has really been consistent. You hear about programs like yours, and I think people try to find something negative about it. You try to find something that can be negative, and I always look at the kids. The kids will tell you without telling you what they really think of a program, and these kids wear Buford like a prize. They're proud of it. They want people to know they go to Buford, they rep Buford. And when I see that, I know that the coaching staff and I know that the administration and I know that the community is doing their part because the kids are proud. You know.
Man, just another great dime by you. Like that. That's awesome that you notice that stuff and you say that stuff. And you also mentioned what I was about to tell you is that I'm taking that as a compliment again. But there are so many other people that are helping in that. I mean, the teachers that work at Buford are proud to be at Buford, and they love being at Buford, and they love the community. And so our kids see that every day.
Yeah.
The parents are happy to be here and to wear Buford and be involved in, and not just basketball, but all the other sports that we have here too that are great.
Right.
And being at the schools and the community. I mean, it's just, I'm very lucky and blessed to be at a place where there is still great community and there's still people that are proud to be here and have a lot of pride.
Absolutely. It shows. So what would you say to a coach that is getting into the sports, into basketball, I'll say basketball, that's starting off, much like you started off as a head coach and you had, 2 years here, 2 years there, then you went and you took an assistant coaching job and you learned more. What would you say to a coach period that's coming into the game, trying to get their feet wet? Like, what would be the first thing you think they should do as far as building their career?
I just thought about two things when you're asking that. Number one is invest your time and your energy. I know that's going to be dependent on your family situation, how much time you do have, but invest in mentors and people like our relationship. Me and you have a relationship now that we'll have forever, and it started online,
right?
There are so many great coaches in Georgia, and I'll just talk to Georgia since that's what we're talking about here, but it could be anywhere you're at. If any coaches listening to this, find mentors, find coaches that have gone through this, and invest your time and reach out to them. The coaching community is strong. I mean, it's a small community, but guys are willing to help out. I mean, you just got to take that leap and reach out to them.
Right.
Go watch a practice, go sit down with them. I mean, I could rattle off 10 names right now that I could give you for people to do that. But find people that you look up to, find people that are willing to talk to you.
Yeah.
That would be my first thing for someone trying to get into the profession. And then when you have a job, learn your environment.
Yeah.
Learn what you can do at the school. This is my fourth school I've been at, and the resources that I have at Buford are not the same resources I had at other places.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so you have to know the environment that you're at. You have to know what people care about, what you can do, what you can't do. But learning your environment of your school and your community is huge. You're not just coaching basketball. That is not, that's not your only job. You're going to be a teacher. But those would be my two things of advice: is invest in mentors and then really learn your environment.
Yes, those are really good pieces. Do you think, and this is a question I think goes around my group chat a lot, is we talk about the expectation that some parents and some kids have from their coaches as far as getting them to that next level. What do you think the high school coaches' responsibility is when it comes to their kids getting to play college ball? Like, do you think bulk of that responsibility falls on the high school coach, or like what's your opinion on that?
Okay. That's a great question. I have no idea if I'm right, but I'm just going to be honest with you, and I hope I don't get long-winded. You got to think a lot of these parents are trusting the coaches to help with their kid.
Right.
And that's what they're doing. That whether that's right or wrong, there are some parents who understand the game and understand that world, whether it's AAU and how all that stuff works. They understand that better than some parents.
Right.
So I think as a coach, one of your responsibilities is to sit down and talk with the parents about it. I have parent meetings in the fall, in the spring, we're not in season, and then I have parent meetings during the season, but those are a little bit more spaced out.
Right.
And in all those meetings, especially before the season starts, we're going to talk about the college recruitment.
Right.
In Georgia, there's only certain times that the college coaches can be out,
Right.
even when we have our workouts. But I do think it's our job to promote that. I think it's our job to put them in situations like this live event that we have coming up in the next. That's unbelievable.
Yes.
That's great. I mean, it's a blessing to be able to be there and the work those guys have done to get that and girls. That's a huge event. I think trying to get your kids into that and give them that opportunity, explaining to them how the AAU scene works and how important that is to their development. I do think we play a big role, but here's the reality, Daryl, and you know this because of your background. I cannot get their son a scholarship. I cannot do that.
Absolutely.
I cannot. I can reach out. We can take a list of your dream school.
Yeah.
Another column of where you think you can, which ones do you qualify for, but I cannot get them a scholarship.
Absolutely.
But so I'm not trying to pass the buck knowing that I can't do that for them, but I can help them. And we've been very fortunate to have some kids go from our program to college. Right. And I do think the way you run your program can prepare kids that can play college to play college.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. Because that's literally taking the words directly out of my mouth. Like, everything that you said is exactly what I try to get not only the parents to understand, but, even to the high school coach. I think a lot of times a lot of coaches feel guilty, because they are either they don't know who to reach out to or how to even begin this process of recruitment. Because like you said, everybody has different levels of their own knowledge. So, and the truth is, we could reach out to somebody and they never respond to us, so it's like, I can only do as much as I can do, but I can give you the tools to put yourself out there, and that's why we talk about, especially now, social media. If you're not on Twitter and you're not a 5-star player that's being seen by every single body, then you need to be on Twitter, putting yourself out there, talking to coaches, putting your film out there. And I think for me, the only real responsibility that I put on the high school coach is, like you said, putting them in the right situations, making sure that you do put them in the right tournaments. You do take them to the lives. And then you even go the step further, I think, having these parent meetings, explaining to them about certain things. That's further than I've seen most coaches go. Just giving them the opportunity to ask those questions and have that reality check of, is my son ready for college?
Right.
Does he have the grades? Does he have, then, like you said, the resources? Buford sets these kids up in a way where grades is not going to be the reason you don't go to college.
Correct.
The reason you don't go play college ball is going to be something else besides your academics. So that part is checked off. Now we're looking at, are we in the right tournaments? You go to some really big tournaments. Like, you're being seen by a lot of people. You're winning regional, So what's the next step? Now it's on the kids, I think. The kids have to get on social media. They have to be present on social media. And, every program isn't as, blessed as a Buford or as a, the Huntsvilles of, Alabama. Yeah. But what can you do to still put yourself out there and be seen? And
great point. And in those meetings you talked about, like, in those meetings, we will for the kids that do want to play college basketball or think they can. I mean, we're definitely going to show them how to do a highlight tape and how to send an email and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But also the reality is that sometimes those harsh conversations are, well, this is your dream list, and that's great, and this is more of a reality list.
Right.
Listen, to play college basketball is very, very difficult.
Very.
A very small percentage is going to do it, and that conversation is tough sometimes.
Yeah.
And also, we've got kids in our program that are great players for us, but they don't want to play in college. And so those parent meetings are different. The ones that want to play in college but listen, those college coaches are very busy.
Yeah.
They know who they want to see.
Yeah.
we've had people call us, come to a lot of workouts, and there's been times where they didn't come as much, and
Right.
a lot of that had to do with the players.
Right.
And so, just going back to that, like we cannot get you. I mean, a high school coach cannot get you a scholarship. I
No.
mean, they got to feed their families.
Yeah. I mean, no coach can guarantee you a scholarship to anywhere. I
Nope.
took a team, I think 3 years ago now, I took a team up to a play date at Alabama, and I had a really good relationship with Petway. When he
Yeah.
seen me, we talked for a long time. He actually moved our games around so that he could see every one of our games.
Right.
And from that day, everybody thinks that, well, if he knows Petway, he can give me a scholarship with Petway. And I'm
Yeah.
like, Petway owes me nothing.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if Petway gets fired, I can't pay Petway's bills.
Nope.
So he's
Nope.
not going to give anybody anything just because I asked him to. And
Right.
that's the misunderstanding I think a lot of kids have is, yes, it is about who you know in a sense, but who you know doesn't guarantee you anything. That just guarantees you maybe a opportunity to be seen. Like
Correct.
I can get him
You're right.
to look at you, but I don't know what he's going to do once he does that.
Exactly. Are
And
you ready for that opportunity? Are you going to be ready? Because, sometimes you only get seen one time.
yeah,
That, what kind of impression are you going to make?
yeah,
And we do talk about those things now. Like, um, are you going to stand out?
yeah,
How are you going to be different? I mean, you're fixing to go into a gym. Like we got guys that will go to events on the weekend, and if I get to see them face to face, I'll talk to them. Or I'll just shoot them a text, and I'll just try to give them some encouragement. Like, man, you got to stand out somehow.
yeah,
And we talk about those things that you can do to stand out.
yeah. And that's great that you do that. Everything I'm hearing from you, of course, like I said, I see it in your players. And so nothing you're saying to me is shocking because I already see it in your players. But what you're saying and what you do, you won't believe how unnatural that is when I talk to a lot of high school coaches. And I know a lot of, you teach and you coach, so there's a lot going on in your schedule, but you won't believe how many high school coaches just leave it at that. I coach the team. I open the gym for practice. I'm going after that. We're not doing any team bonding events. We're not doing any of this extra stuff. I coach the team. I go home.
Yeah.
And it's a wonder to them why we're not winning games.
Yeah.
Your team doesn't know each other. Your team doesn't know you. Your team doesn't respect you. So it's like it's a matter of building that chemistry not only with your team, but also with you. They trust you. They know who you are. They know they can rely on you, and you'll go to bat for them, so they're gonna go back for you.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
And that goes and like doing that small stuff is how you earn the trust from these kids. Them knowing that hey, he's teaching us how to send an email to a college. He's teaching us how to do all these things, and he's being honest with me. I came to him saying I want to go to Duke. Coach Parker was very honest with me. I
Right.
can trust him. I may not have liked what he said in that moment, but at the end of the day, I can trust him. And now I'm being more realistic with my college approach. And now I'm actually being responded to by these coaches because I'm not reaching out to Duke and North Carolina. I'm reaching out to, these smaller schools.
Right. Schools that are more your fit, and gosh almighty, if any college coach likes you, that's
That's
amazing.
Yeah.
That's a blessing. Yeah.
Yeah. I love what you're doing. Like that speaks volumes. And I hope that I know a couple of coaches I've talked to, they need to hear that, because, it's important to just earn the trust of your kids, but then also show up for your kids.
Yeah. Well, I've been very blessed and very lucky. Working for Eddie Martin here at Buford was the greatest blessing to my coaching career could have been. It's opened so many doors for me, and then just in our athletic department here, my colleagues that coach other sports here on the men's and women's side, like it's just I've got great resources that have helped me out because I did not know all this stuff. I still don't know everything, but I didn't even know this stuff before I got here.
Right. I mean, it's a learning curve. I think,
Yes.
and the more that makes you a better coach as well, knowing that there's more to learn.
For sure.
Always being a sponge to hearing more and getting more knowledge, and that's a big reason why I wanted to bring you on here because you are a coach. Like I said, I followed you for a while, but to be able to actually get to pick your brain a little bit and to hear certain things and see some stuff that I kind of already kind of knew, but then hear some things it's like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good point. I can take that knowledge to someone else. I can take that knowledge and maybe help somebody else build their program up.
Yes, sir.
You're a program that everybody knows, and those are questions that people want to know. Like, how do you get that? How do you get your kids to buy in? How do you get your kids to show up? How do
Yeah.
you win so many games? What is that conversation like after a loss? When you
Right.
go home before the state championship game, and you don't win that state. What's that conversation like?
Right.
Those are big, big
Tough.
pieces. Yeah.
You're right. You're so right.
So what would you say to like I guess what would be the message now for the coach to build their program? Um, I know we talked about the chemistry part of it. What would you
Yeah.
say would be the thing that the coach can do to get his players to buy in? Like, what would be that message?
Yeah. Kind of going back to the very first thing you talked about was with relationships.
Yeah.
You talk about getting buy-in. You're talking about trying to get someone to do something they might not want to do.
Right.
You know, how do you do that? Me and you both have kids. It's really you have to have a relationship. You have to be authentic.
Yeah.
I have found that the kids, just kids, whether it's my 7 to 3 in the school building or my 3 to 6 at the practice court,
Yeah.
kids care about: are you competent? Do you have character?
Yeah.
Do you care about me?
Yeah.
Outside of that, they'll work with any other. I've got a lot of flaws, and they know my flaws.
Yeah.
Just like my wife knows my flaws. But at least I try to be genuine and
Yeah.
authentic, and I try to care. 'Cause they know that stuff.
Yeah.
They can deal with all my flaws as long as I'm treating them the right way. I have character about me. I think that stuff matters, especially the kids.
Absolutely. Because kids, they see that more than anybody.
They know.
And they haven't gotten to a point, most of them haven't gotten to a point where they're learning to bite their tongue on stuff, or they're learning to look the other way on stuff. As an adult, we tend to learn those traits. We tend to be like, okay, well, it's okay. I can kind of go with the flow a little bit. But a
Yeah.
kid, like you said, if you don't care about me, it stops there.
You can forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can forget if you don't care about them, and they know if it's genuine, or if I'm acting like I care to get them to do something for me.
Absolutely.
If I'm using it, like if I'm just using these guys for their talent, they'll know that.
Yeah.
They'll know that.
Yeah.
I just it's hard to really be transformational. It's much easier to be transactional with them.
Absolutely.
And so I don't know. I mean, it's not always perfect, but I tell you what, if I screw something up, I tell them I screwed it up.
Yeah.
They look at me like I'm crazy. Like, I can't believe, like, I screwed that up. That's on me. That's not y'all's fault.
Yeah.
Just telling them you're sorry that you messed it up. I mean,
Yeah.
goes a long way.
A long way. I even do that with my 10-year-old.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Like I told my parents, I didn't get those sorries. I said, but
Yeah, I didn't either. No, I didn't either.
yeah, but I'm very intentional because I do it with my athletes, and so I kind of took that motto to my kids as well, because it's like kids, they know when it's not their fault, and they come sometimes eat that, because we as adults tend to be like, we're not going to swallow that pride, we're not going to let you know that it's our fault, but kids,
Right.
they feel that, and they're like, well, then he's always blaming us, or
Always blaming us.
and then the next thing is he don't know what he's doing, because
Yeah.
some way this is always our fault, but he
Yep.
did that.
He messed that up.
Yeah, so to hear you say like, I'm sorry, that was me, that was my mess
Yeah.
up, that builds that trust, that shows accountability, and it teaches them how to do it as well. When
Good point.
they now can do it, and they can do it with each other, and they can do it with you, and that's
Right.
going to go far further than basketball. When they graduate high school and they're in the world, they can take accountability,
For sure.
and that's something that I don't see a lot in kids, because always, like you said, it's very easy to be selfish.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
you teach them that, that's going to go way further than basketball.
Yeah, it's human nature to be selfish, I think. I could be wrong about that, but I mean,
I agree.
or something happens in a game between a teammate, a bad pass, whatever, is the first thing you do, blame someone else.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think you got to care about, kids. I think you got to have character about you. And I think you got to be competent.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. So for me, I'm gonna be all within y'all's program. So be ready to see me a lot.
Yeah, come
I
on.
wish I could have found a place in the city because I really wanted my son, to be there. I was excited about the uniforms and everything. I was excited,
Yeah,
but
we're very lucky. We're very lucky with that. They treat us very well. That's again going back. That's one thing we didn't get new uniforms. Every year. So I mean, I'm very thankful. I do not take that for granted at all.
yeah, yeah, you have a wonderful program. So I will be a part. So I'll be in touch with you. To see like how to what the next step would be, like just be a part of the program, like to be a part
Yes,
of that
sir.
culture. Anything I can do as far as any knowledge with recruitment or anything I can do to help out, I'm definitely um, ready to do it. You know, um, Even to this podcast, like I would love to have your players on,
Okay.
to highlight different parts of your season. Whatever I can do to put you in front of coaches or whatever. I really
There, I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much for that, and thanks for getting me on here to
absolutely
talk with you, man. I really appreciate it. When you get a chance now, you need to go check out on the Instagram account.
okay,
We've had youth camp this week, so today was day 3.
okay,
Tomorrow's the last day, so go check that. We posted the first 3 days, so if you
definitely.
get a chance, I know you're busy, but go check those out.
I definitely will. You said tomorrow's the last day. Is it in the morning?
Tomorrow's day 4.
Okay,
Yeah, it's 9 to 12. We've been doing camp and then practices after camp. So,
okay.
yeah, you'll like some of the videos we got on there.
Yeah, I'll definitely go check them out. I might try to get up there in the morning and see if I can clear my schedule.
Okay.
I can get up there and see y'all practice afterwards or something.
Yeah, great. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, Coach. Like
I'm ready, Daryl.
I've been looking forward to this, and you really dropped a lot of dimes, and I love your genuine spirit that you have, for basketball, for coaching, and for kids. We
Appreciate
need
that,
that.
man.
We need a lot more of it. So I'm glad that you are a part of that culture for me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm glad I got to make a connection, man. Appreciate you, buddy.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, Daryl.